Well, this is going to be fun. I'm very excited about this, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Mike.
You chose 5 songs that we're going to hear over the course of the next hour as kind of stepping off points for discussion. And I'm not sure why you chose those songs, but all of the music that all the lyrics that you have written, why did you choose the 5 we're going to hear tonight?
Well, I guess because they're songs that most people will know, and most people prefer hearing songs they know than songs they don't know. Nothing worse, when you go to a rock concert and you hear, you know, the star playing all his hits, and then 3/4 of the way through he says, and now a couple of songs from the new album, and people go, oh. You want to hear the hits? I don't want to hear the hits, but they want to hear the hits.
Well, we're going to hear some of those hits as we go through the next hour or so. It was your intent, anybody who's read your bio knows that it was your intent to become what you call a solicitor, what we call an attorney, at least one point in your very early life. But aside from your passion for cricket, you also have a passion for pop music.
Yes, yes.
So how did you go from having a passion for pop music, and I guess back then the music of that day was what? Name some artists.
Elvis,
okay.
Buddy Holly, Everly Brothers, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Carl Perkins, Paul Anka, Bobby Darin, Bobby V. How long do you want me to go on?
No, that's not.
The Four Preps. I like the Four Preps.
But anyway, that was the music.
Dwayne Eddy.
That was the music that you loved.
I love pop music. American. Also, we were very snobbish about it in England. We felt automatically any American pop record was always better than the British equivalent, which was, at the time, probably true. But there were some great British artists in the pre-Beatles era who never really made it big in America. Because the world was a bigger place. And people like Cliff Richard and the Shadows, who were really talented. And their only mistake was making it in 1958 rather than 1963. Because in 1958 there was no television across the Atlantic. Planes had to stop off in Reykjavik, Greenland, Gander, and to get to New York. And it was just, the United States of America was a remote planet for us people in Great Britain. And it was, in a way, it was wonderful, because it was like these extraordinary stars led by Elvis, who were not quite real. You looked at their covers on the albums and you thought, these guys are on another planet. I mean, Don and Phil Everly on their album covers looked staggering. I thought, these guys, they got nothing to do with Harpenden, Hertfordshire, England. But we all loved it. The records were so good. But we had talent. We had Cliff Richard, Marty Wilde, Billy Fury, Adam Faith. They were good acts. But it wasn't until the era of jet planes flying across the Atlantic and videos and television that the Beatles and Stones cashed in on it. And they were incredibly talented.
And you've had a chance to work with Cliff Richard on a number of projects. And Cliff Richard had some hits.
He's had success here.
Yeah, he's had success here.
Yeah.
But you just listed off all these names. I mean, I can't name the people in my neighborhood as quickly as you did. These people from 1958 and before. And I guess that's how you won the title Rock Brain of the Universe. Is that it? Because you're very up on trivia.
Yeah, that was a sort of radio program which was a bit of a gimmick, and it was done for about 4 or 5 years. And one year I won it, but it was hardly Rock Brain of the Universe. There were very few people from Jupiter taking part. It was just me. There was a guy from Australia, a guy from Canada, and a guy from America, and we all won it once, I think. And it was like who played sax on Yakety Yak, which is, not something which has been much use to me in life, other than winning Rock Brain of the Universe.
Everybody knows, I would assume almost everybody in this room knows all the shows that you've written lyrics for. How many different songs do you think you've written lyrics for?
It probably in the region of 400 or 500, of which, frankly, only 20 are known, well known anyway, and I would say only about 100 are any good. I mean, I've got a lot of songs. No, seriously, I'm not being modest, but everybody writes an awful lot of crap in order for the good stuff to come out. And I've written a lot of songs. And I've got a list of songs which I think are rather good, but nobody's quite heard. They've either been in the wrong show or they haven't had a good recording. And I probably could find 30 or 40 songs which in another universe could have been hits, and but just weren't in the right place at the right time. But a lot of stuff one writes is not very good.
So what makes the difference? Do you know it when you write it that that's not very good, so
well,
it'll be okay in this show, but this is a hit. This is a hit. How do you know?
You don't always know, because if a song is going to be in, certainly with the way I got going through shows rather than one-off songs. Right. I think it was. I mean, I Don't Know How to Love Him is a case in point. We wrote that for. It was a song in Jesus Christ Superstar, and it was a big hit out of the show as well as in the show. But originally it was a rather bad song called Kansas Morning, which the same beautiful tune with awful lyrics written by me. And
do you remember those lyrics?
Unfortunately, I do. But had that song only ever existed as Kansas Morning, it would be totally forgotten. But because it eventually had a good lyric, and more importantly, was in a good show, it became a hit. So timing is everything. I mean, you have to have a song in the right show at the right time, or the right recording.
So let me guess. A Kansas morning.
I love the Kansas morning. Kansas mist at my window. You want to hear more? But when it had a decent, it was interesting because I kind of thought this is in a way quite encouraging, because the tune was great. Andrew wrote a wonderful tune, but it wasn't a hit until it had a good lyric. And admittedly, it had a very bad lyric to start with, but that was encouraging for the sort of songs we were writing. I thought both bits have to be good.
Right. I think the first show you collaborated on with Andrew was Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and that was followed up by Jesus Christ Superstar. I'm just curious. These are both biblically based.
Correct.
Why? Why would you step out of the box?
We weren't trying to convert anybody or anything. It was. In fact, the first show we wrote, which never got off the ground, was a musical about Dr. Bernardo, the Victorian philanthropist, and that never got anywhere. I mean, it has not funny. It's a tragic story. It had some really good tunes. The music was good, and one or two of the tunes appeared in later shows. Lyrically, the funny songs were quite good. We were learning the trade a bit. And then we wrote Joseph for a school. And we chose, or I chose, the Bible story of Joseph because it was something, the only incentive we had was a schoolmaster commissioned it because he'd heard our Dr. Bernardo musical and he thought it was quite good. Nobody else had really heard it. But he said, write something for the kids. And the only carrot we had was that it would possibly be something that all schools would do, and it would be something that might become an educational staple for schools in years to come. So we thought, well, we better write something that appeals to teachers as well as to the kids. And that seemed to be Bible was pretty good. And Joseph was my favorite story when I was a child. I loved the story of Joseph was good in many colors. And it was a story we could have a few laughs with and be funny, and also serious. And it worked. But it wasn't a hit initially, and it was that in turn led us to Superstar. And again, when I was a kid at school, I always thought Pontius Pilate and Judas Iscariot got a bit of a rough deal. I'm not saying they were nice guys, but Pontius Pilate happened to be there. He was governor of Judea at a time when this strange man was brought before him for trial. And Judas Iscariot was quite possibly the only, he was the most doubting member of the apostles who thought, I'm not sure where this movement's going. And these were things I thought about when I was at school. I went to a very church-based school, learnt the Bible stories, the New Testament, and I just thought, what would it be like to be Judas Iscariot? Would I have been Judas, or would I have been Peter or Paul or whatever? Would I have been totally pro or doubting? And I think I would have been doubting.
When you look back at that show today, it seems very natural that it would be a hit, and it seems like everybody would be readily accepting of it. But I remember it started as a concept album.
Right.
And I remember first hearing it at my college radio station and being blown away by A, the music on it and the idea of it, but also a little taken aback by the title, Jesus Christ Superstar.
Well,
wow.
It was quite shocking, maybe that's too strong a word, but it was quite sort of wow in 1969. And originally, when we put out a record, the first single, which was just the song Superstar, it was, we'd written the song Jesus Christ, who are you, what have you sacrificed? And that repeated. And I saw an advert for Tom Jones, of all people, in a music paper, and it said, Tom Jones, the world's #1 superstar. And I was just idly thinking, Jesus Christ, superstar. Hang on, that kind of works. And I think that was a big factor in the success, because in 1969 or 1970, if you saw that album, you thought, this sounds interesting, or this sounds awful. But either way, you wanted to hear it, see what it was like. And I think the title was a big factor in getting people to listen to it. It had to be good. You know, people would listen to it, and if it was crap, they'd say, well, forget it. But it was good. I can say this 40 years on, I'm not being arrogant. It's been a hit, I don't need to plug it. But if you haven't bought it, go out and get it. You can see it. And it was, the thing is, we didn't really know what we were doing, except we were doing what we liked. We were writing what we would have bought if somebody else had done it. And that title made a bit of a difference.
So it started as a concept album.
It began a record. Nobody wanted to stage it as a show. We tried to do it as a show. Nobody wanted to know, so we had to do an album.
So did it have a script when you wanted to stage it, or
Well,
did the script come later?
Had we staged it, I think it would have been pretty awful, and it would have lasted, it would have died, because we were very conventional. By mistake, we turned out to be groundbreaking with that album, but we hadn't intended to be. We thought this will be musical, and we'll have a book, and Judas will come in stage left and say, hi Jesus, what's happening today? And then it would go into a song, and it would have been terrible, and we would have opened in an out-of-town theatre in 1969, 1970, and in those days you could not do rock in theatre. There was no, it was impossible really for a theatre to incorporate a rock band with musicians. And it was something that just didn't happen. The rock audience and the theatre audience were way apart. And I think if we tried to do it as a stage show, it wouldn't have worked. And also, it wouldn't have been rock. We would have been toned down. They would have said, well, you can't do rock here, so we've got a nice little string quartet and this, that, and the other. But when we did it as an album, we had to make it more rock, which is what we wanted to do. Because our only outlet for it was radio. And we ditched the book. We didn't want people talking on an album because, you know, you're going to play it once if it's, you know, they'll say, well, I've heard this dialogue. So, and also we had to make it shorter. We had 2 albums. We couldn't make it more than 80 minutes long. And the best thing about Superstar is that it's quite short. And everything, most musicals are 10 minutes too long. Everything in life is 10 minutes too long. So I'll stop this question.
So what was the interval between the concept album, which went on to success, and the first staging of it?
Well, it was weird because the album came out in England in September 1970, and it got a bit of an impact, but there was radio in those days. There was only BBC, there was nothing else. There were no commercial radio stations, and BBC were a bit wary about playing it because they thought it might be blasphemous and all that. And it kind of flopped. And what we had, the Americans had said, MCA Records in America said, well, come on over and do some promotion. And again, you've got to remember, in those days, there was no emails, there was no mobile phones. And we went and we thought, at least we're going to get a free trip to America. It'll be great fun, we'll see America. And we'll walk up Fifth Avenue and, you know, we'll have a good time and we'll go home and we'll think about writing a musical on Robin Hood or whatever. But when we turned up, the Americans had really, MCA had really thought this was going to be a hit. And they promoted it brilliantly. And it was like number 40 on the charts when we got to our hotel. It was number 20 the next morning and number 1 in about 2 weeks. It was extraordinary. It was an overnight smash. I felt awful because it knocked George Harrison, one of my heroes, off number 1. I felt terrible. Like, you know, if I ever meet George, you know, I don't know what to say. He probably didn't even notice. But it was such a big hit record. And then, of course, having had the situation before with nobody wanting to stage it as a show, suddenly everybody wanted to stage it. Because by mistake, we'd created a hit score with no hit album. Oh, sorry, with no hit show. We had a hit album and no theatre. And suddenly, people thought, hang on, this isn't what My Fair Lady did. It's the wrong way round. But Robert Stigwood moved in, he became our producer, and he set up the show and we got the show on in October '71, by which time the album had sold literally 6 or 7 million copies.
And Robert Stigwood went on to do the Bee Gees, right?
Well, he was doing the Bee Gees already, and I mean, at the time, at one point, he had Bee Gees, Eric Clapton, Yvonne Elliman, Superstar, Evita, The Who, and Grease all at once. He was quite a big name in the 70s and 80s.
So Jesus Christ Superstar was a hit record because of the songs on Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yes, it was the whole album that was a hit. We had hit songs from the album, but it was something about the concept, and it was the album was in the late 60s, early 70s, the record album. You guys are all too young, but albums were big plastic things, 12 inches across, hole in the middle, and they were great. Vinyl. And albums had just taken over from singles. Singles, I mean, were still very important, but albums in '69, I think, was the first year that more albums were bought than singles. And so we hit that market by luck. And people went out and bought Jesus Christ Superstar. And it was weird because the first time round the kids bought it, it was number 1, and then it went down to about number 4. And then the mums and dads, which finished us as being trendy, but the mums and dads all heard it, and they liked it too. And that went back to number 1.
What was the biggest song in the show?
I Don't Know How to Love Him was the biggest song.
I Don't Know How to Love Him, and that's the song we're going to hear.
Great.
Right now. And we're going to bring back somebody who spent a lot of time in Charlotte, but who has gone on to great success, actually, in film and television. And I'd like you all to welcome Maria Howard. saw people in the audience singing along, mouthing the words. That must be a great compliment to you. They know the
yes,
words.
if they know it, yes, that's great.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
But they know the words beyond. They know them beyond the title. They know the whole song.
Well, it's been around for 40
I
years,
know.
you know. Yes, it was a big hit. Helen Reddy had the record.
Really?
Yeah.
So did Yvonne Elliman.
And Yvonne Elliman had the hit as well. We had 2 hits on it, and a lot of people have covered it over the years, so which is great. I mean,
That song in the show is sung by Mary Magdalene.
correct.
And it's about how she's never met a man like this before.
Correct.
She's singing about having been with lots of men, and this guy wants nothing to do with her in that way. But she loves him. How does she get through to him? How does he get through to her? How does that work, though, as a pop song? And it worked as a pop song.
Well, I guess I don't know, but I would say maybe a lot of women have been in that position. I don't know. I mean, you have to. It was written for the storyline primarily, but I think it, you know. Oh gosh, I can get into boring philosophical stuff here, but you know, any person entering into any love affair usually hasn't got a clue how it's going to go, and they worry about it. So it's a kind of what the hell's going on song, you know, which is what most people feel most of the time. Don't they?
You mentioned.
I know I do.
You mentioned how these songs came into the popular consciousness before the show was even on the stage.
Yep.
Which is unusual because it's in the reverse, but it strikes me that since then, your songs have taken the traditional path, but there was a period there after Rodgers and Hammerstein and Rodgers and Hart and George and Ira Gershwin and people like that, when those songs ceased to be the fodder for popular music, Broadway went away in the popular consciousness. Not your songs, not your shows. They keep leaking into radio and leaking into other venues. Why?
Well, I think obviously our stuff is more contemporary in one sense only than Rodgers and Hart, Rodgers and Hammerstein, but their songs, which are absolutely brilliant, are still wildly popular. I mean, Rod Stewart, a Brit,
Right.
Recorded 5 albums of the Great American Songbook and sold millions of records. And those great songs don't go away. And I like to think that 1 or 2 of our songs have got up there with some of those songs, but our stuff, I mean, it's hard to get our sort of stuff played on the radio these days. You know, things have changed, and it's probably just because we're all codgers and a bit out of touch. But you know, you can go on analysing why some things are successful and why some things aren't. And in the end, you just have to, something will strike a chord with the prospective buyer or listener. They will say, I think I understand that, or I think it could be just something that's got a great beat and it's fun. Or it could be something that people think, I know, yeah, I've been in that situation, or my mum has been in that situation, or my friend's been, you know. It's just doing something that people can relate to. It doesn't have to be serious. It can be fun. I mean, Don't Step on My Blue Suede Shoes is a great lyric. It's a great song.
Yeah.
You know, and it just means sod off everybody.
You've written lyrics for songs that are part of shows. We have songs that advance character, songs that advance the story, etc. You've also written straight-up pop songs that have nothing to do with shows. So when you sit down to write a lyric for a pop song, is there a difference in the way?
Well, to be honest, I've not written very many successful one-off pop songs.
Didn't say they were successful. I just say.
I noticed that. I've always found it very difficult to write a one-off pop song, simply because you think, why am I doing this? It's very hard to. I guess if you're an artist doing an album, then it becomes something more than just a 2.5-minute slab of music. But I find that I can work best if I've got a storyline and I've got a character like Mary Magdalene in that song. And I think, what would she think in that situation? Whereas if you've just got to write a pop song, which, don't get me wrong, a lot of pop songs are brilliant. I mean, take a song like Wake Up Little Susie, you know, which I was playing today, the Everly Brothers. It's a great pop song. How the geniuses who wrote it thought that up is almost beyond me, because it's not part of a show. I would only come up with something like that if it was a story about Susie falling asleep, and you know, you'd have to have a whole story for me to get that. But some people can write brilliant one-off pop songs that I don't think I can.
In 1981, you teamed up with two guys from ABBA, whose names I cannot pronounce. Benny Andersson I can do.
Yep, Bjorn Ulvaeus.
Easy for you to say. To write what would become a show called Chess.
Yeah.
For people who have not seen this show, because it's not often done, but it too started as a concept album.
Yep.
What is Chess about?
Well, it's about, I was going to say, cheap joke, 1 hour, 30 minutes. It's a Cold War love story set in 1979, and it's about a Russian chess player and an American chess player, and it's kind of based on Bobby Fischer and Korchnoi and Spassky and the Cold War, and it's difficult to talk about it without getting into, you know.
But is it also a metaphor for the fact that the Cold War
Well,
was
the Cold
kind of
War,
a chess game?
Yeah, I mean, the Cold War back in the 70s and 80s was often fought by surrogate, you know, means. And when Fischer and Spassky met in Iceland for the World Chess Championship, Fischer was the American, and people like Henry Kissinger got involved because it was very important that they felt that the Americans must not lose to the Russians, and ditto on the Russian side. The complication there was that Fischer was meant to be our guy. It was a nasty piece of work. And Spassky, who was meant to be the evil representative of the ghastly communist regime, was actually a jolly nice fellow. So it was a bit confusing for people following it. But actually it made rather a good point about the Cold War, that the Cold War, the people involved on either side were not necessarily representative of what their nations felt. But I was intrigued by the complications and I mean, Spassky wanted, you know, he had love problems. Korchnoi, another Russian chess player, had left the East and couldn't get his wife and children out. I mean, there were so many personal, romantic and tragic things that were involved in the story of these chess players and to the background of the Cold War.
But what an odd topic for a show. Whose idea was it?
Well, it was mine, I'm afraid. I do apologise. But,
No.
but it's been. I mean, it's always been done. It was a big hit in London. The record was a big hit. We had a big single record called One Night in Bangkok here from the school, and we had a #1 record in England and other countries with a song that I know so well. And it was a big record, but it was a hit show in London, and it's been done in lots of other countries. But on Broadway, it was a total flop, a major disaster. But it wasn't a very good production, to be honest.
Okay. But when you got together...
It's coming back. Sorry about that.
But you got together with these two guys who had written Dancing Queen. So,
that's a good song.
And it's a very good song. You know, I'm not being pejorative. It's a very good song, but it's very different from...
Well, if we listen to Benny Andersson's work, I mean, I would rate him up there with Grieg, you know, as a Scandinavian composer. He is phenomenal, and some of the stuff in Chess is very classical.
Yes.
And if you listen to songs like The Winner Takes It All or Fernando, the melodies are just sensational. And ABBA only really broke over here quite late in their career. In Europe, the rest of the world, they were huge. They were as big as the Beatles in terms of their records, obviously not in terms of changing the culture, but ABBA records just dominated the world. And they did it with Sweden. I mean, nobody thought that was possible. They won Eurovision, which is a competition for songs, which is regarded as a bit naff. And every year, somebody wins, and usually it's a pretty awful song. When they won, Waterloo went to #1, it was a big hit in America, and they conquered the world. Singing in English, they wouldn't have done it if they sang in Swedish.
You mentioned that some of the songs are kind of classical in nature, and one of them is called Anthem. And it is an anthem. In the show, it's an anthem.
Right.
It's an anthem to love. I think it's also a surrogate as an anthem for one of those countries.
Well, it's in the show, it's when the Russian chess player defects, and he's accused by the press of deserting his country, and he says, no, I'm not leaving anywhere, you know, and he sings this song, the Anthem, which is normally the end of the first half of the show.
So we're going to hear Anthem, which was written by you and these two guys from ABBA.
Right.
And then we're going to segue into another song that was written by one of the great talents of all time, in the rock era at least, Elton John and you. And we're going to begin with Robert Nipper and that is Adam McKnight, and before that Robert Nipper sang Anthem. And Circle of Life, of course, is from the great Disney hit, The Lion King. I expected lions and elephants to be walking through here, but instead everybody had their phones out, taping all of this. As that was being sung, I was just thinking, what must it be like to be somebody who writes lyrics? I don't know how you do this or where you do it, but it's probably a very solitary thing. And then you get together with a composer, and they screw it up for you because it's your lyrics. But then you hear it coming out of the mouths of these singers that bring it to life. What does that do for you the first time that you hear it, and then every other time that you hear it?
Well, the interesting thing about Circle of Life and other stuff with Elton is that he only writes music when he gets the lyrics. So, and that's unique with people I work with. 99% of composers prefer to write the tune and then hand it over to the lyricist. But when you're writing a show, be it words first or music first, you need to get the story right. So with Lion King, I was working with Disney on the story for quite a while before one felt able to send something to Elton. It was actually good for the project that Elton was going to add the music later because we were able to concentrate completely on the storyline. And we had two or three cracks at Circle of Life which didn't really work. And then we decided to go for the slightly more serious approach to the song. Originally it was going to be quite funny, all songs about giraffes doing this, that and the other. But then I thought, well, we need a fairly serious song which kind of sort of encapsulates the whole theme of the entire piece. And I sent this lyric off to, actually I didn't send it off to Elton. I said, I'll have the lyric by Tuesday because he was going to record it or write it on Thursday in the studio. And I rang him up and said, I'll get you. He said, oh no, don't worry about that, bring it along on Thursday. So I went on to the studio with the lyric, which I just finished in time, and gave it to Elton. And he sat there in the studio. It's one of the most extraordinary moments of my entire working life. And he sat there with a guy called Guy, funny enough, Guy Babylon, who was his sort of, I don't know what the word for him was, but he was his sort of technical musician. He would do all the rhythms and set up any patterns Elton wanted. And Elton got various rhythms going, and he sat at the keyboard. And I gave him the lyric, and he began singing it. And I was with Eileen, my PA and great friend, and when we just sat there in the control room, listening to him singing these words over and over again. And gradually a tune was emerging, with Guy doing different rhythmic patterns on his gadgets. And at one point he said, "Can I have one more line?" Because he was building up this fantastic crescendo, leap of faith, or whatever. Well, I can't remember the words now, but it went right up, building up this climax. He wanted another line, and I just said, "On the path unwinding." I'm not quite sure where that came from, probably from Nick from Long and Winding Road. But it kind of worked. And he wrote the entire beautiful melody in an hour and a half, and that was quite something. And then he said, "Well, here it is." I thought, well, this sounds like a hit to me. But on the other songs, I would send off the lyrics, and then two or three days later would come back, Elton singing. And it's great when you hear Elton John singing your lyrics for the first time. No one, you think that's pretty good stuff.
That song actually begins in the show with a solo voice singing in the darkness.
Yes, well, for the show, and indeed for the movie, a sort of Lebo M came in, who was a great African composer, and he added lots of arrangements and orchestrations to the basic songs, and wrote one or two pieces himself for the show. He's a great, great talent and very important part of the whole project. But Elton recorded, and the Circle of Life, Elton then did his own version as a single recording, which was quite a big hit.
So Noel Friedline, who's been playing piano and also singing backup, I'm just curious, if you turn Noel's mic on for a second, there was a chant at the beginning of that.
Yes.
What are the words
I have no idea, to be honest with you. Their Zulu is the phonetic pronunciation. It's Inwayama Pingwinama Nambada. But we always just say, you know, pink pajamas, penguins on the bottom. It's pretty much what we were singing. Pink pajamas, penguins on the bottom. Pink pajamas. So, yeah, welcome to showbiz, ladies and gentlemen.
So, those words are Zulu and they really do mean something? Or is that just...
no idea. No, the first time I heard it was, the first time I heard the whole song was Elton, and then when he went into the film, this, Sienna, and all that, and it just sounded fantastic. And it just worked. It was a great coalition of British rock, theatrical music, and wonderful Zulu sounds. It was a great combination.
So you never answered my question about what it must be like for you as a lyricist to first hear these songs that you've written come to life.
Well, I suppose if it's good, it's great. I mean, the interesting thing is that other things, like Don't Cry For Me Argentina, for example, I got the tune first, and I would then have to put a lyric to the tune. So when I'd done that, I was the only person in the world who'd heard the song, the finished song. And you don't really know whether it's any good until somebody else hears it. With the other way around, when I'm writing the words without a tune, and it comes back to me, then that is when you feel the wow factor.
Which way do you like working? Do you like
well,
working?
I think I mean, honestly, it's hard to choose. It was good for my stuff with Disney, with Elton. It was a different way of working, and I rather liked that. I was doing the same job, but I was working in a way I hadn't done before, so it kind of got me enthused and a spark of greater enthusiasm.
But when you're writing a set of lyrics for a show like Evita, and for somebody like Andrew Lloyd Webber, it must be different than writing with Elton John. It must be very different.
It's very different. I mean, Andrew is much more theatrical, traditional theatre than Elton. And he didn't really want to do Evita in the first instance. I had to persuade him this was a good idea. And I think he wrote a magnificent score, partly because I don't think he thought it would be a hit. I really think he thought, well, I'm not quite sure what I want to do at the moment, but I'll do Tim's bonkers idea on this Eva Peron lady. And he wrote a wonderful score. And it was, I mean, I saw Evita in London. He came back to London last summer, and I saw it again for the first time in a theatre for a couple of years. And I just kept thinking, these are great tunes. I mean, there isn't a bad tune in it. It's tune after tune after tune. It's a magnificent score.
Yeah, I think...
And I don't think Andrew was thinking about, how do I promote this, you know, how do I sell this, what theatre will I put it in? That was not, he was young and he just thought, I'll do this while I'm thinking about what to do next.
I think this is my opinion and I could be really wrong, but I think that when the history of the American, of musicals of the 20th and 21st century is written, it's going to be, aside from the Gershwins and people like that, it's going to be Stephen Sondheim, Andrew Lloyd Webber, and Timothy Rice. And the Disney musicals, which have just they've changed the face of Broadway. And a lot of people take objection to that because they say it's the Disneyfication of an art form, and it's kind of ruined it. I don't think it has. What do you think?
Well, I think with Disney, like anybody else, some of the shows are great, and some of them are not so great. And I wouldn't, you know, certainly not publicly, to say which ones I think are great and which ones aren't. But I think...
Oh, come on. No one's
but everybody, you know, certainly me and Andrew included, we've had disasters. And the Disney team are really good, and most of their stuff's been successful. But I think when they do something like Lion King, or Beauty and the Beast, there's no doubt that it is a great asset to musical theatre history, if you like. And no one can have a smash all the time. I mean, Stephen Sondheim's had a few flops.
Oh, yeah.
And Andrew and I certainly have. So it's...
But when you start,
Nobody knows when you're working on a show, nobody knows really until it's too late whether it's going to be a hit or not.
when you start your career with writing something like Jesus Christ Superstar, which was cutting edge for its time,
Yep.
and rock in a world that wasn't open to having rock music played in a pit band or on stage, and then you move toward your later parts of your career to writing Disney stuff, and the songs you've written are wonderful, but do they seem tame to you in retrospect?
Oh, difficult question. Just to, after Andrew and I parted our ways and he went on to do Phantom and Cats, I did Chess, which I feel was cutting edge. It was, and it's, you know, it's still around, and it was definitely quite contemporary. Well, I don't know. See, I think Lion King, which I saw last week in New York, when you look at it, you think actually this is quite a breakthrough in many ways. But there's nothing wrong actually in being part of the conventional, you know, family tree of musicals. And you can't, frankly, when you get on a bit, when you're, you know, not 28 anymore, it's difficult to be cutting edge, I can assure you.
Lion King, you mentioned
Have my moments there.
You mentioned seeing Lion King last week, and you saw it, was it last week, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Because it celebrated a milestone.
It did 20 years on Broadway, yeah.
20 years on Broadway.
Still 7 years. When you carried away.
Where do you put the royalty checks? That's what I want.
I'm very, very grateful for that. It's an old age pension, to put it mildly, but the thing is, shows are running much longer now. I mean, 20 years is phenomenal, but it's not incredibly phenomenal, if that's not an oxymoron. Phantom's done 27 years, Les Mis did 24 or something. Shows run much, much longer. My Fair Lady, one of the greatest shows ever written, ran about 4 years, and that was phenomenal. Superstar, in its day in London, and it was a big hit, broke the all-time record for a long run, 8 years. Well, 8 years now, it's almost a flop. You know, there's extraordinary, huge new audiences, despite the fact that the shows go out everywhere. They go to Budapest, they go to Stockholm, they go to all over America, they go around the world, Australia, Japan, Korea. Despite that, you can go and see Lion King almost anywhere. It still runs for 20 years on Broadway. It's quite sure I understand why.
To make the money back.
Well, no, but of course, but you can't, even Disney can't force people into theatre.
Well, it's because of people...
Disney have had flops.
But it's because of people like you and shows that you've been involved in that really has revitalized the musical. The musical was kind of dead. When Jesus Christ Superstar came along, there was all this panic in New York about, this new...
Well, I think that the musical is always written off every sort of 3 or 4 years, so people say, well, it's not what it was. And in a way, they're right, but in a way, they're also wrong, because people will look back on in 2040, they'll say, well, Les Mis, Miss Saigon, Phantom, Cats, Evita, that was a pretty good era. What's wrong with the guys now? And whoever's writing hit musicals in 2030, 2040, they'll be slagged off, and then in 2070, they'll be looked back as a golden age. You know, it's by and large, I think musicals keep going somehow, and they're incredibly popular still. I mean, they work. And I mean, look at Hamilton, what a great show. Hamilton is brilliant. And Hamilton is, in a way, the superstar of its day, you know, without trying to make superstar sound terrific, but it's different, and it's proven that you can do something different. And the great thing about Hamilton is it's not only got very modern music, it could only have been written in the last few years. It also sticks to musical tradition by telling a great story with wonderful choreography and great sets and lighting. It's a great, I mean, I'm sure some of you have seen it. It's a fantastically good show. A bit worrying, really.
I want to go to a show that you helped write for Disney called Aladdin, and the song won an Oscar in 1992. And let's hear it. This is Maria Howell and Adam McKnight collaborating on this collaboration that you had with Alan Menken on A Whole New World.
Show you the world, shining, shimmering, splendid. Tell me, princess, now me to ride a whole new world, a new fantastic point of view. No one to tell us no, or where to go, or say we're wrong. We're dreaming
a whole new world, a dazzling place I never knew. But when I'm way up here, it's crystal clear that now I'm in a whole new world with you. Unbelievable sights, indescribable feelings, soaring, tumbling, freewheeling through an endless diver's sky. A whole new world, 100,000 things to see. I'm like a shooting star, I've come so far, I can't go back to where I
with new
every moment better. I'll take you anywhere. There's time to spare. I let me share a whole new world with you.
a whole new world. That's where we'll be. A thrilling chase
A wondrous place for you and me.
Maria Howell and Night. Let's reverse engineer that. I think it would be fun to reverse engineer that for people who don't know how this happens, because the purpose of a song in a Broadway musical, or in a musical, because you don't write just for Broadway, is to either tell the story about a character or to advance the story of the show. So when this came to you, who told you that we need this song and it needs to accomplish this with these two characters? How does that work?
Well, with that song, which was in the movie of Aladdin originally, I was brought in fairly last minute because the great lyricist Howard Ashman died, and he hadn't finished his work on Aladdin. I hadn't met Alan Menken at that point, and I kind of, I think, earned my stripes by working on Lion King, which hadn't yet come out. And they said, forget Lion King for 3 weeks or 6 weeks, go and work on Aladdin. And this missing big song was the ballad, in which Aladdin and Jasmine went on this magic carpet. So I had to write a song. Alan gave me this great tune, and I had to write a song about Aladdin, you know, showing Jasmine around the world. And it came fairly quickly, you know, and I was really under orders. I mean, I was a hard hand, but I was very lucky because I was given a great tune. I also won an Oscar, which is extraordinary, because I didn't be in the film business for about 12 minutes. It's a good song, and it's one of Alan's greatest tunes, and it's technically my biggest ever hit because it went to #1 as a single in America, and it was quite a big hit in England as well. And it's a very pretty song. It works. British fans will be thrilled to hear it was a tribute to the great Billy Fury in it, because I stuck in the very end a line, "A Wondrous Place," which is one of Billy's greatest hits. No one in America got this remotely, but Billy Fury fans, that's why it's there. A few Billy Fury fans.
That's right, they're clapping for Billy Fury. There are a lot of British people here tonight. You may have noticed.
Yes.
I understand that maybe it's not your latest work anymore, but there was a period, not in the not-too-distant past, when you were working on the musical version of From Here to Eternity.
Well, I am, yes, that's very much...
It's been produced.
It's been produced, I've just come down from Maine, where it was done at the Ogunquit Playhouse, and it worked very well. And I'm hopeful that this musical will eventually, I mean, the graph is slowly but steadily going up, and we're hoping to do a workshop in New York next spring, and maybe, the reviews were very good up in Maine, They were good in Auburn, New York the year before. We've just been trying it out and getting it right. It takes time.
Who are you working with on that?
Well, it's an unknown composer, certainly here. He's a little bit known in England, a guy called Stuart Bracey. And it's just such a good story. The great James Jones book. It's all set in Pearl Harbor. Well, not all actually in Pearl Harbor. It's all set in Hawaii just before the Pearl Harbor attack.
It's hard to, it would strike me to be very hard to collaborate because it's like walking on eggshells, it would seem to me, as you get to know this new person that you're working with on this show, etc. How does that work out? Do you walk in knowing this is going to work, or we're going to be able to work together?
No idea when it's going to work.
Not the product, just the fact that you can
the
work
relationship. Well, I think you've got to admire and like the guy you're working with, or girl, it might be, you never know. So if that's a given, then you've got a good shot at doing something that you both like. Nobody else may like it, but you've got to. I mean, Stuart has been around for a long time in England. He's never had enormous success, but I've always admired his work. And when he came up with this idea to do From Here to Eternity, which is a great story, and I really admired his music, I was happy to work with him.
How does somebody who has not had enormous success get to work with Tim Rice?
Well, I've just known him for 20 years, and he writes about 3 musicals a week. And he's just very great fan of musicals. He had a pop group for a while, which did quite well. And he just sent me musical after musical. And when he sent me From Here to Eternity, I thought, this is interesting. And it was such a good story. And it may well get to Broadway. It may not, but so far it's just making the progress slowly but surely.
Well, I've seen little snippets of it, and it looks terrific.
There's some good stuff in it, I think.
I was told under strict orders to keep this to 55 minutes.
Right.
And we're coming up toward that. So to end the evening, may I return to the beginning?
You may return to the beginning, yes.
And to Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. You wrote a song for that show, in which I think encapsulates the message for the show, and which tells the audience to believe in their own dreams.
Yes, it's a funny song, Any Dream Will Do. Assuming that's the one you're going to
That's
say.
the song.
Otherwise, what I'm about to say is a complete waste of time. It's a funny song because it's actually rather, it's a bit pessimistic. I look at it and I think, it's sort of assumed to be a happy song, and it's always sung when Joseph comes on, he sings it like he's terribly happy. And in a way it is, but it's kind of, the message is really, most people would rather dream than face reality, which is not a particularly cheerful message, although I think that's often true. It somehow comes over, because it's got such a lovely, catchy tune, it comes over as a very positive song, which I hope it is a positive song, but I have to say, sometimes I think the lyrics are a little bit of a downer. I get lots of people writing to me saying, what does this song mean? And I say, well, it's about people who go to sleep, or they dream. They don't go to sleep, but they dream and they have ambitions, and everything's wonderful. And then something goes wrong, and they want to get back to the dream. But I'm not saying that things have to go wrong. I've bored the hell out of you on this song. You probably like the song until now, but
I thought it did.
But it's every time I hear it, and when you go to see Joseph, you will hear it several times. Every time I hear it, I think it's one of the most popular songs we've ever written. I mean, in England, you can't get away from it. And I saw Joseph the other day in London, and everybody loves that song. They go bananas about it. And I think I don't think any of you get it. And I think I wish I'd written a slightly more up lyric. But if people think it's an up lyric, then that's fine. I hope they do.
Okay, we're going to bring everybody back on this one. Maria Howell, Adam McKnight, Robert Nipper all singing, along with Noel Friedline at piano, Tim Singh on bass, and Al Sorgel on
Great song.
Any Dream Will Do.
I closed my eyes, drew back the curtain to see for certain what I thought I knew. Far, far away, someone was weeping, but the world was sleeping. thank you very much for coming. Oh, wait, one more thing. It is Tim's birthday tomorrow.